President Donald Trump taking a victory lap. 3 days after striking Caracas, Venezuela, and capturing ousted Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro and his wife Celia, President Trump addressed House Republicans at the newly named Trump Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C.
It goes down with one of the most incredible. It was so complex. 152 airplanes, many. Talk about boots on the ground. We had a lot of boots on the ground. But it was amazing. And think of it, nobody was killed. And on the other side, a lot of people were killed. Unfortunately, I say that, soldiers. Cubans, mostly Cubans.
We have new information on those Cuban agents and why and how they failed. DEA Chief Terry Cole joins me later this hour. And as you can see in this picture on your screen, Cole helped welcome Maduro into the United States after he was captured. Also ahead, an Ohio mystery and tragedy. An Ohio dentist and his wife killed inside their Columbus home with their children present in the home. Their killer is on the loose. But now a new video has been released of a suspect. This as the city of Baltimore has cut homicides by a whopping 60% in 5 years. What's Baltimore's secret? That later in the show. But first, foreign correspondent Chuck Holton is in Cucuta, Colombia with the latest. Chuck?
That's right, Greta. This operation to take out Nicolas Maduro actually exposed something much deeper, and that is that the Cuban intelligence apparatus has really been pulling the strings in Venezuela for a long time. Cuba admits that they had more than 32 of their special forces and spies killed during that operation. They declared 2 days of national mourning in Cuba, and that it goes to show that Cuba has been putting their security agents, not just in the government, but it also shows that Nicolas Maduro didn't trust his own troops. So for years, the Cubans have been surrounding Nicolas Maduro, his close protection team, and those are the guys who went up against Delta Force and lost on Saturday night.
Chuck, tell me, how far are you actually from the border right now?
It's right here, Greta. I'm looking at these armored personnel carriers, but if we go right over here, you can see the border crossing right there. The vehicles that are coming out of Venezuela it's very busy today, but there are also a lot going back into Venezuela. So it's not like people are fleeing, it's more like they're going shopping. As we've talked to the people here, they say that their lives have not changed substantially, except for the fact that they're being threatened by the criminal gangs called colectivos inside Venezuela. And the new government, it's the same government, but with a new leader, Delcy Rodriguez, is threatening the Venezuelans that if they make any statement that looks like it was, they are glad that Nicolas Maduro got taken, they will be considered a traitor to the fatherland and treated accordingly.
Is there anything that stops these people coming in? Is there any fee they have to pay? Are their cars searched? Are they questioned?
Very little is done on this border crossing, Greta, because since Gustavo Petro took office about 5 years ago, he's Venezuela. So they opened up this crossing, and there were no checks. Now there are Venezuelan troops on the other side that are checking the vehicles coming in, but the vehicles coming into Colombia, almost nothing, almost no checks. I've only seen 1 or 2 get stopped by the Colombian police. So the people. There are lots of people that live in Venezuela that put their kids in school on this side of the border and come over here to go shopping all the time.
Have you heard of any of the other borders having any impediments, like their cars checked or any fee or anything to stop the flow from the Venezuelans into Colombia?
No, we've been to several of the border crossings in this region, and they're quieter than this one, fewer people coming across. And this morning we were at one in Ureña, right north of here. There were Venezuelan troops checking the cars coming in, but no checks at all on the cars coming out.
So do you have any sort of theory? You and I have been also in Nicoclé, which is farther west in Colombia, which is the staging ground to go up the Darien Gap into Mexico, into the United States. Is there any reason why people coming from Venezuela, if they can so freely move in and out of Venezuela into Colombia, and they can even stay in Colombia, do you have any sort of thought why they continue on beyond Colombia, which seems to be quite hospitable to them?
Well, it's an economic decision for them, Greta. You're right. There are millions of Venezuelans who have crossed right through this gate behind me in the last 10 years, and they've made a life for themselves inside Venezuela. Venezuela gives them the ability to work. They give them temporary protected status, and there's not really any reason for them to keep going except to make more money. And so many of them during the Biden administration left here and cleared out entire neighborhoods in places like Caracas, in Cartagena and Bogota and places like that, and sent those people up north to the U.S. southern border, like you and I saw in Necoclí.
But see, even that doesn't make any sense to me, because when you get to Necoclí, which is a staging ground to begin the Darien Gap is very risky. You've got cartels, you've got robberies, you've got rapes, you've got, might not have any food. It's a long trek. It's a tough terrain. And it seems to me, I just can't understand why people are willing to risk their lives going through this horrible situation where a lot of people didn't survive, is that why they still pursued up through the Darien Gap into Mexico, eventually into the United States. It doesn't make sense to me. I would rather stay in Colombia, which is a country that that wanted me, and that I wasn't at risk.
You're right. And Colombia, they speak the same language. They have a similar culture. It's closer if you want to go back and visit relatives in Venezuela. So it only makes sense when you think about the amount of money that they can make there as opposed to here. It'd be like taking your average American laborer and telling him, if you just jump the fence or cross a mountaintop to go into Canada, you can make $15 million a year, or something like that. To them, getting to the United States is like winning the lottery. And I've even talked with people here in Cucuta who have said, why can't we just go to the United States and make a bunch of money? If we work there for a couple of years, we can come back to Venezuela and have it made for the rest of our lives. And so that's the calculus that they're making, as far as I can tell.
Well, a few years ago, I was in Cucuta, where you are right now, and people were trying to leave Venezuela to go into Colombia. The lines were long. They were taking all their possessions. They had, suitcases, boxes, families, and they were like, thousands of people, and they were just walking up into the mountains, no place to go. It seems to be such a different sight than what you see right now.
It really is a different sight, and it's mostly because of the relationship between Colombia and Venezuela. Now, anybody who wanted to leave Venezuela, for the most part, has left. There are many people now who, as I said, they live in Venezuela because it's cheaper to live there, and they know that they can easily come across into Colombia to go shopping, to put their kids in school, or to work. And so pretty much everybody around me, all of the merchants and the taxi drivers and everybody you talk to, are Venezuelans here that live over there because it's cheaper to live on that side. And so again, it's an economic calculus, but it doesn't make sense to Americans. Totally understandable there.
Chuck Holton in Cucuta, Colombia, thank you. And coming up, a sudden death of a Republican congressman. That one, the record continues.
Federal agencies urge every family to have an emergency radio. During any disaster, electrical power may get cut. The emergency radio gives you the vital information you need. Newsmax wants you to have the Dynamo Emergency Band Radio. It doesn't need batteries and works in any emergencies. It retails for $30. You can get it with the free offer. Call or go online and get the emergency radio today. Your life may depend on it.
WeatherTech isn't just for new cars. No matter how old or new your car is, it deserves WeatherTech. With laser measured protection for every car on the road, we've got you covered. Because messes don't care what year your car is. Whatever you're driving, we got it. We got it. We got it. Got it. We got it. We got it. We've got it. Oh, we got it. No matter what year your vehicle is, it deserves WeatherTech. Order your American-made protection today at WT.com. We're WeatherTech. We got it.
Here's Chris Cunahan with the Leaf Filter Gutter Report.
From blizzards to downpours to windstorms or heat waves, no matter where you live, Leaf Filter keeps your gutters clog-free year-round. Schedule your free inspection today. Call 833-LEAF-FILTER or visit leaffilter.com.
Here we go again. Everyone wants to know. So here it is.
Melania, rated PG. Exclusively in theaters January 30th.
This isn't your average pill. This is Rose Sparks. Rose Sparks. Rose Sparks. Rose Sparks.
Rose Sparks is a fast-acting solution because it dissolves under your tongue.
Rose Sparks.
Guys, get started today.
Connect with a provider to find out if Rose Sparks are right for you.
The opposition leader of Venezuela, but not in Venezuela now, is Maria Corina Machado. She says she wants to share her Nobel Peace Prize with President Trump. Machado has been in hiding for more than 16 months, and she also says she plans to return to Venezuela as soon as possible. But will she be the one to lead Venezuela? Not if President Trump has his way, though. President Trump says that Machado lacks the internal support to run Venezuela. At the moment, Maduro's Vice President Delcy Rodriguez is currently in charge, having been elevated to president. But in charge is sort of a loose term for this country in chaos. Foreign Affairs correspondent Alex Salvi joins me. Alex?
Yeah, Greta, you laid it out right there. The Trump administration right now is letting the former Vice President Delcy Rodriguez run the country. But make no mistake about it, the administration is very clear that the buck stops with President Trump when it comes to actually making decisions there. In fact, President Trump, in an interview with NBC, saying that the priority for right now is implementing the proper reforms to realign Venezuela's priorities. He says only then can the country hold elections, admitting that likely won't take place anytime over the next 30 days. The administration is reportedly looking for Delcy Rodriguez and the remaining leadership to make 4 substantial changes to the country, including cracking down on illegal drug flows, kicking out hostile foreign actors, stop selling oil to U.S. adversaries, and finally facilitating free and fair elections before eventually stepping away from power altogether. The decision to keep Maduro's cabinet largely intact follows a U.S. intelligence assessment that determined the opposition party in Venezuela just didn't have a clear plan to successfully take over the country. Still, its leader and Nobel Prize winner Maria Corina Machado is praising President Trump for his decisive action and is calling for elections herself, saying that her party would win overwhelmingly. But the priority for the White House is slightly different, is to revamp Venezuela's oil industry and, of course, ultimately redirect the country's oil to the United States. In fact, representatives from American oil giants are expected to meet with the Trump administration later this week to discuss the roadmap for doing business in Venezuela and finally what resources would be required to restore an industry that was abused and decimated under Nicolas Maduro.
You know, Alex, we sort of learned a lesson in Iraq not to disassemble the entire military in Iraq and the Ba'ath Party, and that drove it into further chaos, and then we really got stuck with something for the next 15 years. It sort of makes sense not to disrupt Venezuela to the extent of, even if this Delcy Rodriguez is not a great leader, if she meets those 4 points, that does solve our problem without giving us a bigger problem.
You could look at the situation in Iraq, too, and question whether or not moving a strongman was the right decision. That was a debate that was happening back then as well. But you look at what's happening right now in Venezuela. Up to this point, it's been considered a largely success. But what could really undo all of that is if Venezuela were to fall in complete turmoil. Keep in mind that Maduro was keeping the military in line, but if the military, for example, was not in line with Corina Machado, that could splinter the fractions within Venezuela. You already have cartels. You have different gangs operating there as well. If this were to all go haywire, it would be a different story.
But you bring up the military and how important it is that the military not be disrupted. But then again, I mean, how much did Maduro respect the military respect him, if he is surrounded by Cubans to guard him? He didn't trust his own military to guard him. So there must be, some sort of degraded relationship between the government, between Maduro and now his new president, now the new president.
It shows the paranoia that Nicolas Maduro had, acknowledging the fact that he was not the rightfully elected president. Maria Machado says that upwards of 90% of the country is actually against him. So that may speak to exactly what it is, but it also speaks to the ties that Venezuela has with Cuba. I mean, those two countries have been propping themselves up together largely for the better part of the past 15 years.
But what does Cuba offer him? I mean, that's the other thing. What does Cuba offer him except for some guards that may not be so loyal to Maduro but make him a puppet of Cuba?
Well, it's twofold. On one hand, Venezuela props up the Cuban economy by giving it cheap oil. Cuba, on the other hand, provides intelligence on the United States, and its mere presence off the shore of Florida it kind of leaves that option of if, for example, Venezuela wanted to turn and really cement its relationship with Russia and China, it could then turn to Cuba and put missiles off the coast of Florida. And even with Venezuela, technically, that's a 30-minute shots away from Washington, D.C. if things were to get kinetic.
Alex Salvi, thank you.
Thank you.
Today marks 5 years since some protesters stormed the United States Capitol. Since then, there have been congressional committees, hearings, charges, and pardons, but it's not over. President Trump is suing the BBC over the BBC edit of Trump's January 6th speech. Trump is suing the BBC for $10 billion. The suit accuses BBC of maliciously and deceptively editing Trump's speech. The lawsuit claims the BBC edit made it appear that Trump incited the violence by excluding the part where President Trump called on supporters to peacefully protest. BBC has apologized to the president, but denies that it was reporting was defamatory. BBC says it plans to vigorously defend the lawsuit. Coming up, the head of the DEA, who was with Maduro after his capture, joins me next when the record continues.
Newsmax.
Shoots it straight. No talking down to me.
Don't tell me how to think.
Don't tell me how to think.
Don't tell me how to think.
I trust Newsmax. Newsmax.
They don't tell me how to think. They let me decide.
Real news for real people.
I'm Elmer Heinrich, the 91-year-old formulator of Immuno 150, an incredible nutritional supplement. There's nothing like it. Now, Immuno 150 is different because it contains 70 plant-derived minerals and 80 other nutrients. Dr. Linus Pauling, known for vitamin C, was instrumental in convincing me to get into the mineral business in 1983. He said the world is sick due to a lack of minerals in topsoil. He said the body needs 60 minerals, but the average food and supplement has no more than 12. That's the reason for Immuno 150. Since its inception, it's had a powerful impact on the lives of thousands of people who could not get any help from various supplements they took or their doctor. Now, I suggest you try Immuno 150 to see what 70 minerals, CoQ10, and 80 nutrients can do for you. Look at the videos on our website. Millions have. Now, consider placing an order for Immuno 150 online or call our toll-free number. I know you'll be glad you did.
When we started Allegiance, we were shocked to learn how many American flags are actually made overseas.
If there's one thing that deserves to be made here in America, it should start with the American flag.
At Allegiance, we do it differently. Flags 100% made in America by Americans with American materials.
Join our pledge to make the American flag truly American.
Visit showallegiance.com to get your high-quality American flag today. That's showallegiance.com.
Don't kibble your dog.
Oh, hey, Dr. Marty.
Hey, Matt.
But what's wrong with this? It's premium stuff.
Let's check it out. It's still kibble, which means it's ultra-processed at extremely high temperatures that destroy the nutrients in the food. But at Dr. Marty, we gently freeze-dried premium meats, fruits, and vegetables, locking in their nutrients.
Never kibbled.
You got it, kid, and they're gonna love it.
Science didn't stop at diet and exercise. Why would you? Super Beats by Human delivers blood pressure support with clinically researched ingredients because cardiovascular health is everything health. Available at your local Costco.
It only took me about 3 months to realize that I needed help. I had a great job, was doing well. It was a startup company, and they went under. I didn't know how I was going to pay for things. I had to find a solution. Teaming up with J.G. Wentworth is one of the best decisions I ever made.
If you have credit card, personal loan, or medical debt, J.G. Wentworth's debt relief program can help reduce what you owe by up to 45% before fees.
J.G. Wentworth cut my debt 46%, and I was able to pay that debt off in a little over 3 years.
J.G. Wentworth can help eliminate your debt in as little as 24 months.
After working with J.G. Wentworth, I felt relief. If you are in debt like I was, I highly recommend calling J.G. Wentworth.
If your debt is more than $10,000, you're not alone. Visit jgwentworth.com or call 877-CASH-NOW to learn how our team of specialists can help you find a path to debt relief.
You may have seen this photo. It is ousted Venezuelan dictator Nicolas Maduro giving a double thumbs up. This was as he was being led in custody after his capture. Maduro was standing next to the head of the Drug Enforcement Administration, Terry Cole. DA Administrator Terry Cole joins me. Nice to talk to you, sir.
Hey, Greta. Happy New Year. It's good to see you. Thanks for having us.
Thank you, and thanks for your great work. So tell me, I take it you do you speak Spanish?
I do. Yes, ma'am. I was in Colombia for 4.5 years. I was fortunate enough to be there when we were rebuilding the Colombian National Police and dealing with some of the issues in Venezuela during the early 2000s as well.
So were you able to have a conversation with Maduro, or did you have a conversation with him at all?
I did not. I just welcomed him to the United States, told him that I was the director of the Drug Enforcement Administration, and that was basically it. For me, it was all about business. I was looking into the eyes of evil. I was looking into a foreign dictator that deals with foreign terrorists to send poison to the United States. This is all about business. This is all about protecting Americans. This is all about defending our national security and standing up for what's right.
Did he acknowledge you in any way, or did he just listen to you when you told him that?
He was surprised that the director of the Drug Enforcement Administration was standing there. But I was standing there for the 12,000 DEA employees that have a single mission. And that mission is to protect the United States, save American lives, and hold people accountable, hold terrorists accountable that are sending this poison to the United States.
Okay, now let's go back to Friday night, 10:46. President Trump gives the go-ahead. When did you first learn, or were you like part of all the planning? Tell me how the DEA works on this.
Yeah, so the DEA's been supporting our federal partners. We are deeply embedded with the Department of War in all aspects to defend our country, to bring these foreign terrorists to the United States to stand trial for their atrocities. We have been involved from the start, and we continue to support all the efforts of the Department of War, the IC community, and all our federal law enforcement partners. But it was the great work of the men and women of the DEA that started this case years ago. This regime has been sending this poison to the United States, been working with the foreign designated terrorist FARC, been working with the foreign designated terrorist ELN, along with the TDA, the Cartel de Soles, and let's remember, working hand in hand with the Sinaloa cartel, with CJANG, with the Zetas, to send this poison into the United States for the sole purpose to kill Americans.
When did DEA take custody of him? Did you take custody of him once he was arrested, or was DEA part of the operation, or was it the Department of Justice? Whose plane was it that brought him here?
We took custody of him in country from the Department of War. He was transported to the United States via an FBI aircraft.
And where was his wife?
Well, it's interesting you should ask that. She was with him, and according to the agents that were there, he did not ask once about his wife. The entire ride there. During processing, he didn't ask any questions about the whereabouts of his wife.
When is the last time he likely saw her, though? I mean, if they were on the same plane, would they have seen each other on the same plane?
They were sitting in close proximity when I walked up the steps and walked towards the back of the aircraft.
I take it you didn't have a conversation with his wife?
No, ma'am, I did not.
All right. When was this operation first conceived? How many months ago?
I would have to refer you directly to the Department of War as when they started their planning. We have just supported their efforts from the start. The Department of War and DEA have been embedded together for close to 35 years in this fight against narco trafficking.
You know, a lot of people are saying today, I hear otherwise, is that fentanyl comes in from at the West Coast, from China through Mexico, the United States. Cocaine comes in through Venezuela. Cocaine poisons. I mean, it ruins families. I get it. But some people are even denying that the Venezuelan transit point or a point of origin, that it goes on to Europe, it doesn't come here. Does cocaine come from Venezuela? Do those narco-terrorists, are they part of transporting it here to the United States?
Absolutely. And the Cartel de Soles in TDA, they are an integral part in the transportation, distribution, and manufacturing of cocaine, predominantly in Colombia, working with the FARC and the ELN to send this poison to the U.S.
You know, I can't even imagine if I were running a cartel in Venezuela right now, what I'd be thinking. I mean, first of all, you've got the boats that have been hit. Now you've got the leader of one of the cartels and his wife. Actually, I think his wife is probably more involved than he is. That's my guess, because she seems pretty crafty. But now they are now not a problem to the United States. Those boats and the president, the former president or leader, and his wife. What do you think the cartel leaders are thinking today?
I think cartel leaders all over the world, specifically in the Western Hemisphere, are looking over their shoulders. The DEA will not rest. The DEA will continue to pursue these cartel members, these designated foreign terrorists, with the sole purpose to bring them to justice in the United States. We have to do this. We have to protect our kids. We have to protect our citizens. And the men and women at DEA are back to global enforcement. Global enforcement with our foreign counterparts that have been a staple mark of DEA for 40 plus years. The foreign counterparts still want to work with DEA. They want peace and prosperity in their country just like we do here. They want to save their citizens just like we do here. There is a select group of foreign terrorists that rule those countries that need to be dealt with. In the DEA, the Department of War, the State Department, all our federal partners are laser focused on supporting President Trump, the Attorney General, to accomplish this. We have to do this. This is a war we cannot lose.
Well, the execution of this was flawless. No Americans were hurt, and you got your prey. So congratulations to the DA and other law enforcement. DA Administrator Terry Cole, thank you, sir.
Thank you, guys.
Venezuela's neighbor is on high alert. That neighbor is the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. The Twin Island nation is the southernmost island country in the Caribbean. It's about 6.5 miles off the coast of Venezuela. Last month, just weeks before the United States military action in Venezuela, Trinidad and Tobago opened its airports to the United States military. Senior correspondent John Huddy is in Trinidad with the latest. John?
Yeah, and Greta, I spoke today exclusively with Venezuela's ambassador to Trinidad and Tobago. I'm going to tell you about that in a minute. But this is a country that's been impacted by Venezuela. It shares a maritime border with Venezuela. You know, Colombia, Guyana, Brazil share that land border. Trinidad and Tobago shares a maritime border, but it's also been severely impacted by the narco-trafficking trade, by the Cartel of the Suns, Los Solos cartels, and the cocaine trade that's really ravaged this country to the point where the country's own prime minister declared a state of emergency last year that continues today because of the drug and gang violence. That said, on Monday, Greta, we took a more than 2-hour drive, despite some warnings from people not to do it because of safety factors, but we took a more than 2-hour drive to the southernmost point of Trinidad. At times, I would say a white-knuckle drive along a barely 2-lane road, cutting through remote villages plagued by gang violence to a destination called Icaco's Point. Icaco's Point sits just a couple miles, about 5 miles across the so-called Serpent's Mouth Channel from Venezuela. We were on the beach, see some kids playing there. Trinidad and Icaco's Point, again, just a couple miles. You could see Venezuela across the bay, past the small fishing boats, past the trawlers at the oil platforms. You then look out and you see Venezuela's rugged northeastern coastline, the peninsula kind of jutting out like a finger. You know, we also saw a Trinidadian Coast Guard vessel that you see in the video there, but you see that Venezuelan coastline in the distance, and beyond that is the Caribbean Sea and the locations of the strikes on suspected drug-running boats. Now, Trinidad had diplomatic relations with Venezuela up until late last year, when Venezuela really cut ties and severed those diplomatic agreements, and also, you know, natural gas field agreements in the very important Dragon gas field north of those countries, when due to Trinidad and Tobago's cooperation with the U.S., with our military assets in the region, including, as you may recall, the USS Gravely, which was docked here in the port of Spain in October last year, and also a U.S. radar installation on the island of Tobago at that airport that continues to function right now. That said, Trinidad's prime minister said the country had no involvement with the U.S. military operation in Venezuela. That was something repeated by Trinidad's UN ambassador as well. And there has certainly been a lot of discussion about that, but both officials maintaining that they want to continue to have a peaceful diplomatic and economic relationship with both Venezuela and the United States. That said, there are concerns about this island country's neighbor, and that's something what some locals that we talked to had to say as well here in the Port of Spain. Listen.
It seems as though probably a situation that needed to be dealt with. It's good, it's bad, but at the same time, we as Trinidadians, we actually going through our own problems here right now. So studying someone else's problem, I believe, it's not our business. Yeah. That's the best I will say.
You know, sometimes you have to do certain things to get people in line, you know?
Yeah.
So they're doing what they have to do, you know, but if it was up to me, I'd have probably done it, but different.
How do you guys feel about Americans?
Venezuela and U.S., they have their thing going on. It probably affected, it is.
But you guys are neighbors. I mean, you're like, you're right there next to Venezuela.
Sometimes what you can do is close the window and go back in your room and pretend like it didn't happen.
Well, it did happen, and obviously, you know, it can, you know, whether they like it or not, this country is involved at least political with these discussions. Now, as I mentioned at the top, Greta, quickly, I spoke exclusively today with Venezuela's ambassador to Trinidad and Tobago, Alvaro Sanchez Cordero. We talked about a number of things. We did a phone interview. He couldn't meet in person, but he told me when I asked him about the operation to capture Maduro, he said what Trump did is a complete and absolute violation of international law and UN Charter Articles 1 and 2. And even though this was hinted in his national security strategy, it is still shocking and surprising he would dare to violate all international norms and do something as outrageous and despicable as kidnapping the elected representative of a country on charges that are completely bogus. And then he went on to tell me there's no such thing as President Maduro leading the cartel, the Los Soles cartel, cartel of the Suns, or being a drug dealer. It's about oil. It has nothing to do with narco trafficking or bringing Maduro to justice, which is in itself illegal, talking about that operation. But obviously, Greta, this is what we're hearing from officials in Venezuela, from those connected to the Maduro regime and the government that continues to operate in Caracas. Greta?
John Huddy in Trinidad and Tobago, thank you. Coming up, a dentist and his wife are murdered inside their Ohio home. Where's their killer? That when the record continues.
My cell phone bill kept going up. I started looking around, what are our other options? With Consumer Cellular, I'm saving over $50 a month. Same coverage, same data, same talk, same cell phone, simple.
So why am I paying way more for a big wireless plan? What am I getting for my money?
Consumer Cellular gives you the same fast, reliable nationwide network for up to half the cost of big wireless.
Same tower, same coverage.
I feel like people should know that.
They cut my bill just about in half.
I'm saving almost $100 a month.
That's over $1,000 a year.
Not only did I save money, but our coverage was vastly improved. It was fantastic.
There's got to be a catch, and I'm going to find it by going straight to the CEO himself, Ed Evans. What's up, Ed?
Because we serve primarily the 50-plus market today, we know our customers are going to use a lot less data. We can then set our pricing substantially lower than what the big three are able to do on the exact same networks.
Oh, I love that.
My job is to help you save money on wireless, even if you're on an unlimited plan.
My bill with the big carriers was over $300, and with Consumer Cellular, it's about $100.
Our customers ranked us #1 in network coverage satisfaction. And there's no long-term contracts.
When I look at what I had with Verizon, I'm not sure what I was paying extra for.
And yes, you could keep your number, no problem. Want to bring your phone? That's great too. We'll have you wrapped up in about 20 minutes. Really.
We hadn't gone back. We're not going back. We're with Consumer Cellular.
Call now and see how one of our U.S.-based Switch Pros can cut your bill by up to half. That's right, up to half. And when you call right now, you'll get your second month free. Just use the code SECONDFREE. And AARP members save even more. Call 1-800-918-0560. That's 1-800-918-0560.
This isn't your average pill. This is Rose Sparks. Rose Sparks. Rose Sparks. Rose Sparks.
Rose Sparks is a fast-acting solution because it dissolves under your tongue.
Rose Sparks.
Guys, get started today.
Connect with a provider to find out if Rose Sparks are right for you.
Hey guys, Viagra is not your only option. Rose Sparks act fast and stay active longer. They aren't pills. Sparks dissolve under your tongue to reach your bloodstream for speedy results. Connect with a provider at ro.co/sparks.
48% of Americans don't get enough magnesium, which is vital for bone, nerve, and muscle health. I recommend Cunol's magnesium glycinate. It's formulated for high absorption and is gentle on the stomach. Cunol, the brand I trust.
Derriere, caboose, booty, badunkadunk. No matter what you call it, if you have hemorrhoids, your tushy is no laughing matter. So don't use a cream that treats your rear end like a joke. Get serious relief with Recticare Advanced Hemorrhoidal Cream. Recticare Advanced is seriously effective with 2 powerful medicines for rapid dual-action relief, soothing the uncomfortable swelling, itching, and pain of your hemorrhoids. For serious hemorrhoid relief for your buns, get Recticare Advanced.
We have some sad news. Republican California Congressman Doug LaMalfa has passed away. Today's Chief of Staff released a statement that reads, "Early this morning, Congressman Doug LaMalfa returned home to the Lord. Congressman LaMalfa cared deeply for the people he served and worked tirelessly to hold the government to its word to fix our failing forests, build water storage, and leave people to be free to choose what is best for themselves." End quote. LaMalfa's office did not release a cause of death, but did characterize his death as unexpected. Congressman was 65 years old. With his unexpected passing and former Georgia Republican Congressman Marjorie Taylor Greene resigning, Republicans now hold a very slim majority in the House, 218 to 213. CPAC Chairman Matt Schlapp joins me. Nice to see you, Matt.
Good to see you, Greta.
It seems a little rude for me to go from saying it's sad he died. Now I'm already counting the numbers.
I knew the congressman. He was a political guy. He understood that that's a part of the game. And, I talked to Speaker Johnson before the break, and he said, with Massey and all the other dynamics, Marjorie Taylor was part of the majority back then. He essentially is working with a 1-seat majority. I don't know what he would say today with the passing of Congressman LaMalfa, who I literally just saw at the White House not long ago. Great guy, gregarious guy, big guy, full of life. And he'll be missed, but I don't know what the speaker's got a very tough job for him.
It's also tough.
By the way, another House member got in a very serious car accident in the last 24 hours.
It's in the hospital right now.
Right, so it's a precarious situation in the House.
And the governor or governor-elect, I don't know if she's been sworn in New Jersey.
Right.
There'll be a special election for her seat. That's a strong
Mickey
Democratic.
Sherrill.
Mickey Sherrill. That'll be a strong.
There are 3 open seats, 2 Dem seats, 1 Republican seat, the LaMalfa seat, which I was just talking to Newsmax John Gizzi, who is like the guy who knows everything about politics forever in this country, and he thinks it's going to be a very hard seat to hold.
Well, and then, of course, we have the election coming up, the midterm. And
Yeah.
President Trump seemed quite confident this morning, speaking to the Republican caucus. I would not feel that confident, especially when I look at the board.
He believes in projecting confidence at all times. It's hard to argue with. It's really worked for him. We have this trite expression, Greta. This is the most important election of
It
our
always
lifetime.
does, but every time it does seem like the most important. And this is actually, this midterm is important because he has, if you like him or don't like him, he has made huge changes in this country. And so at the end of 2 years, if he suddenly goes a majority to the Democrats in the House, we will have 2 years of investigations and all sorts of things, and it really stops, it stops his presidency.
Your viewers are going to think that I'm just flattering the host so that I get to get on your show again, but that's completely right, which is actually Trump's win in 2024 is historic. It changes American history. But he will be robbed of his true success if he loses the majority in Congress. The investigations will start, and it'll be a harbinger to what will happen if Democrats get the White House again. I fear we're going to go right back to this law field, right back to having people who have my political views. It becomes almost an illegal thing to have our views. And on J6, I think it's important to say, which is even when things get rough in politics, and that was a rough day, we have to have this idea that we're going to have some sharp divisions. Not everyone should go to jail for that. Now, there should be things you go to jail for, but the idea that they tried to take Trump off the ballot, The idea that Joe Biden was leading the effort to put his opponent in prison.
But the interesting thing about that was in Colorado, I think, is the one that stands out, is that Colorado did take him off the ballot, but it went up to the Supreme Court, and in a unanimous decision by the Supreme Court.
That's a good point.
So there is some,
that shows some decency that people will do the right thing even when it's very political.
The Supreme Court still, the problem is it's so slow to get up there. And it's so slow usually to get a decision, although that one's pretty swift. But the court does mean while the politicians act like politicians.
Well, Greta, I'm very worried about Maduro, who I think is a criminal, and I think this is a legal exercise as much as it is everything. These judges in New York, I have no confidence that they're going to do the right thing. I think this all is going to have to go to the Supreme Court if Maduro and his wife are to see justice. And I hope the court will do the right thing again. And I hope.
But that's it's not going to happen forever.
Years.
Years.
He'll be sitting in some country club prison for a long time.
I actually interviewed General Noriega in prison. He had to wear.
It wasn't that nice.
He was smaller than I was. That's what I always remember. Just that I was shocked how little he was.
Well, it's amazing in these types of things. These men that are such a threat, they become nothing. And we're not going to be mentioning Maduro's name besides when we hear that he's going to court. But he'll have zero influence going forward on his country, and that's a great thing for the people of Venezuela.
We'll see what happens there. There's a lot more ahead with Venezuela. I don't know which way.
So is there some hope in New York? Maybe.
I don't know. I've gotten a little bit sour on the court system, although I do like the Supreme Court ultimately. I mean, just whatever, even if I don't agree with them. Matt Schlapp, nice to see you. In Ohio, a killer on the run. 1 week ago, Dr. Spencer Tappy, a dentist, and his wife Monique were found dead. They were shot in their home in Columbus. Their children, ages 4 and 1, and the couple's dog were all inside the house during the murders. Police say the children and the dog were not harmed. Investigators also say there were no signs of forced entry, which suggests, but is not certain, that the doctor and his wife probably knew their killer. Police have released a video of a person of interest. The person is seen walking in an alley near the home during the time frame of the murders. Colleagues of the victim, Spencer Tappy, called 911 after he did not show up for work at their dental practice. A friend went to the house and discovered the murdered couple and their crying children. Police are investigating the crime as a double homicide. They have not named a suspect nor identified a motive. And here's great news in a city plagued by murders, Baltimore. According to new numbers, homicides have dropped in Baltimore nearly 60% in the last 5 years. Look at the chart. There were 133 homicides last year in a city that was ranked among the most deadly in the nation. There was even an HBO fictional series called The Wire, modeled after Baltimore, that showed Baltimore to be very dangerous. In 2020, Mayor Brandon Scott was elected. He declared gun violence a public health crisis, and he created a 5-year plan to address the root problems. It was not just political talk or talking points. He meant it. Yesterday, the mayor told how the plan has worked.
We are helping folks put down the guns and choose a better way.
That's right.
We're supporting job programs and apprenticeships, creating good paying career opportunities. We're investing in our communities, building schools, rec centers like the Parkview Rec Center that will open in a few weeks up the street, libraries, pools, and playgrounds, and we are seeing the impact.
The police commissioner said more officers are being hired. He also gave credit to the community.
People are telling us, hey, somebody's armed. More than not, we go to that area or we look at it on a camera and the person's armed and we can make an arrest and take a gun off the street that probably prevented a violent act that we can't measure.
In a few months, the mayor, per city law, will have to present a new 5-year violence reduction plan. But it sure looks like the mayor is on the right track. Meanwhile, in Baltimore's neighboring city, right here, Washington, D.C., a police sergeant is apparently on the wrong side of the law. 29-year-old Officer Kayla Cruz has been placed on administrative leave for an alleged road rage incident. It happened on December 18th. Maryland State Police say Cruz brandished a gun and a crowbar while driving. No one was injured. Last year, ironically, Officer Cruz was featured in a recruitment ad. That ad has now been pulled.
I don't have a desk job. I don't sit behind a computer all day. I am in patrol, so when I hit the streets, it's always something different.
Something different indeed. Cruz is now facing first and second-degree assault and criminal use of a firearm. Coming up, one U.S. senator has been fighting Maduro long before he was captured on Saturday morning. That senator joins me next when the record continues.
Halfway doesn't win fights. We show up every day. We run at sunrise, jump rope, we do bag work. Sit-ups, Push-ups, footwork, repeat. One good habit at a time. I'm proud to partner with Balance of Nature, 3 whole fruit and vegetable ingredients. Nothing halfway. Consistency beats talent. How bad do you want it?
Lock in 50% off for 1 year when you subscribe to the Whole Health System.
Every day, bumps and bangs happen. Bruises are optional. Used daily, dermatologist recommended Dermend Moisturizing Bruise Cream can help restore your skin's natural barrier and reduce the appearance of bruises. If you have mature skin and bruise easily, get Dermend Moisturizing Bruise Cream in the first aid aisle and get back to having way too much fun.
Drop is finally here. Drop delivers the weight loss benefits of GLP-1 injections in easy-to-use oral drops, no needles.
That's right. The 2 big drawbacks with weight loss injections are high costs and weekly injections. Drop is flavorless and odorless, so you can just add it to water or your favorite beverage. Drop offers other advantages over injections too. With Drop, you can personalize your dosage based on your weight loss goals.
And because you add Drop to any liquid, there's no concern about injection site infections, bruising, or dosage confusion.
Drop is the easier, safer, cost-effective alternative to help you achieve your weight loss goals without the needles.
Can't find it anywhere? The Wellness Company has it. No consultation needed. Simply order online and use promo code SLIM to save $100. Visit dropthepounds.com/slim. That's promo code SLIM at dropthepounds.com/slim.
Ring in the new year with a kitchen designed to wow. It's the perfect time to explore our quality kitchen cabinet collections to find the well-crafted style you want. Because for a limited time only, you can get the kitchen of your dreams with 0% APR for 48 months. We'll even help you bring your vision to life with a free 3D design consultation. Hurry, offer ends soon. Only at Cabinets to Go. Designed to wow.
WSOP presents the NFL Poker Experience. Rep your team. Compete in exciting NFL tournaments, win exclusive NFL Poker Championship rings, and collect cards to complete the NFL albums. Download the WSOP free-to-play app for a chance to win $1,000 towards your favorite team merchandise.
Venezuelans in Florida are celebrating the United States capture of Nicolas Maduro. Over the weekend, hundreds of Venezuelans gathered in Doral, Florida, just outside of Miami. The Venezuelans waved flags, played music, and embraced one another as news of the capture spread. Many described the moment as historic. Others said that the gathering represented hope after years of political turmoil in Venezuela. Florida U.S. Senator and member of the Senate Armed Services Committee, Senator Rick Scott, joins me. Good afternoon, Senator, and you must be particularly pleased because going back to your old days as governor of Florida, you specifically banned companies from doing any business, any state or any Florida business with the companies that were doing business with these cartels. So your thoughts on the capture?
Well, first off, this is an issue that I and a lot of others have been fighting about for a long, long time. So first, I'm very excited for Venezuelans, whether they're in Florida, the United States, throughout South America, or in Venezuela, because this is their first real opportunity to experience democracy and freedom and all these things in a long time since Chavez got elected. So I want to thank President Trump, Secretary Rubio, Secretary Hegseth, and I want to thank Maria Corina Machado. I mean, she is probably a little bit the unsung hero, even though she won the Nobel Peace Prize. She's been fighting for so long for her country. And now to see that we have a chance here. Now, it's not going to be easy. I talked to Maria a little bit earlier today, and she knows it's going to be hard to ultimately get there. Delcy Rodriguez is not elected. She's not the president of Venezuela, no more than Nicolas Maduro was the president. He robbed elections. She robbed the last election with Maduro. So she's the head of a drug cartel. She's head of a regime, the Chavez Maduro regime. So we're going to hold her accountable. We've got to get the political prisoners released, including 5 Americans. We've got to stop this oppression that's going on right now by Chelsea Rodriguez. But here's what I know. President Trump wants democracy and freedom. He's not going to allow bad things to happen. He's going to stay focused on this, and the right thing is going to happen. While it might take a while, the right thing will happen.
You know, I noticed that you've been fighting this so long, even as far back as when you were governor of the state. It must have been, I mean, how did you find out that the operation had occurred? Who told you?
So Marco Rubio called me early in the morning, right after they had picked up Maduro and his wife, and I think they were on their, they'd probably just left the country, and he called me and told me that it happened. I always hoped and prayed this would happen. You know what I think about? You know what I think about every day? I went to Cucuta in Colombia, right next to the border, and I think about how many Venezuelan little boys and girls were sleeping on the streets, or they were walking across the river there to get one meal a day and going back. And so now these poor little kids are going to have an opportunity. So I was very ecstatic that this was a great day for the world, a great day for Venezuelans, a great day for freedom and the good guys winning.
You know, you have a big Venezuelan population in South Florida. I suspect that we've seen the celebrations, but I wonder, do many of them want to go back? Do you think, or are they pretty much ensconced in the United States? A lot of them are American citizens, if not most of them. But do they want to go home?
I think it's mixed. I mean, look, their families are there. That's where they grew up. I think if there's opportunity, I think a lot of them are going to go back. But a lot of them, they've rebuilt their families here, so they've married, have children here. So it's going to be mixed. But I can just tell you, every Venezuelan I've talked to, they're excited. They love their country. A lot of people wonder what's going to happen. Venezuela is a country that believes in democracy. They fought for democracy. And so Chavez took it away from them. And Maduro took it away from them. So this is a country that is going to embrace democracy again. So this is going to be a tough transition process, but I just think of those little kids in Cucuta that lost all their opportunities, and hopefully they're going to be able to go home and help rebuild the oil industry and other industries in Venezuela. I'm excited for them.
We just went to my colleague, Chuck Holton, who's in Cucuta, and I've been there too. And right now the border's open. People are going back and forth. When I was there, which was about 6 years ago, is that people couldn't, it's very difficult to cross long lines. People were trying to get so desperately out of Venezuela, and now it's an open flow. I don't know if that's exceptional, but, we're facing a lot of change. I just don't know which direction it is. But it'll be interesting to watch, and I guess a congratulations is in order because you have been fighting this battle. Senator Rick Scott, thank you, sir.
Hi, Greta. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. And the Trump administration is halting $10 billion in social service programs to 5 Democratic states. They are Minnesota, New York, California, Illinois, and Colorado. This comes after a massive fraud investigation in Minnesota. ICE agents, though, were sent to investigate, and we've also learned, according to DHS, that some of those ICE agents were denied rooms at a Hilton Hampton Inn. Hilton issued an apology, but it also said the hotel is independently owned and operated. Today, they also said they are removing this hotel from their systems. Hilton says this hotel lied about reversing a ban on immigration agents. Hilton adds they are a, quote, welcoming place for all, end quote. The federal government has also removed the hotel from approved lodging for federal employees. Coming up, a girls' day out. Discover what happens next when the record continues.
You hear the same voices.
Donald Trump knows that's a lie.
From the same people.
Donald Trump is less lucid.
Saying the same thing.
Insults, invective, and outright lies.
And you say, enough! I'm Chris Salcedo, and I'll tell you the real news. If you don't believe me, just tune in.
During the Omaha Steaks end-of-season event, save 50% site-wide and get our Butcher's Classic Assortment with USDA certified tender filet mignon and top sirloin fillets for just $99.99. Plus, get 8 burgers free. Visit omahasteaks.com/TV today.
It all started in 2022 when the Biden administration weaponized the U.S. dollar and imposed sanctions upon Russia. Central banks around the globe moved out of dollar-denominated assets and into gold. Jamie Dimon said gold could easily go to $5,000 or $10,000 an ounce. Gold recently surpassed its inflation-adjusted all-time high. Silver's inflation-adjusted all-time high is $209 an ounce.
Give Patriot Gold Group a call at 1-800-778-4156.
Patriot Gold Group is Consumer Affairs' top-rated gold and silver dealer nationwide, home of the No Fee for Life IRA. See how easy it is to protect your IRA with physical gold and silver.
Call now, 1-800-778-4156.
Joining us is Dr. Drew from the Wellness Company with advice for dealing with seasonal colds and flu. Doctor?
Cold and flu season is here, and every year you or a loved one gets sick. Your doctor can't see you. Waiting in a crowded urgent care is brutal. This is a particularly bad cold and flu season, and it's why doctors suggest every family needs an emergency medical kit. Your medical emergency kit is filled with essential prescriptions. It includes antibiotics like generic Z-Pak to get well faster, amoxicillin for pneumonia, strep throat, ear infections, plus prescriptions for nausea and UTIs, and even ivermectin. It's easy. Just match your symptoms to the prescription in your guidebook or call the telemedicine doctor standing by. Take your medication early and feel better faster. Having a medical emergency kit is like having an urgent care in your home. No waiting to see a doctor, no lines at the pharmacy.
Smart advice. We've shared the website and discount code below to save viewers $45. Order now and your kit will be rushed to your door. Thank you, doctor.
Set sail toward fast asthma relief with Brethora.
$300 for a refill?
Don't pay that. Use Single Care. Look up your prescription, show the coupon to the pharmacist, and save.
See why more people are saving with Single Care.
My heart has experienced life-changing wins, losses, and countless miles. To keep living at my speed, I trust Cunol CoQ10. CoQ10 is the #1 cardiologist-recommended supplement for heart health. Cunol, the brand I trust.
Don't kibble your dog.
Oh, hey, Dr. Marty.
Hey, back.
But what's wrong with this? It's premium stuff.
Let's check it out. It's still kibble, which means it's ultra-processed at extremely high temperatures that destroy the nutrients in the food. But at Dr. Marty, we gently freeze-dry premium meats, fruits, and vegetables, locking in their nutrients.
Never kibbled.
You got it, kid, and they're gonna love it.
Sponsored by Dr. Marty Nature's Blend, the health of fresh food with the convenience of kibble. Visit drmartypets.com/TV.
It is a snow play date. A trio of Syrian brown bears enjoyed New York's snowy weather. The Orphan Wildlife Center shared footage of the girls. Their names, Jenny, Amy, and Sonia. The Chris Salcedo Show is up next. Have a great evening.